Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're all doing well on this Thursday and keeping safe. Today we're going to be talking about transfers, but not incoming transfers, links and all of that stuff. We're going to be talking about some of Chelsea's failed attempts to sign players in the past. But before we get into any of that, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, smash that like button because it helps out the videos as well. But let's get into it, and it's all from an article in The Athletic yesterday which talked about some of Chelsea's biggest failed signings. Pick out some of those ones that are interesting to talk about and discuss with you guys, and then you can give me your opinions in the comments below. But let's get into it. As you can see here, Neymar, Van Dijk, Ozil and Roddy, inside stories of Chelsea's failed signings. This is from Simon Johnson, Dominic Fifield and Jack Lang. Thanks to Roman Abramovich's arrival in 2003, few Premier League clubs have generated more transfer headlines than Chelsea. Some of the finest players in the division's history have been purchased in that time, from Claude Makélélé and Didier Drogba to Eden Hazard and Arjen Robben. But sometimes even the rich fail to get what they want. The Abramovich era is littered with names of players who were pursued but didn't join Chelsea's high rollers. And there are a lot of names in this article that they go into. Some of the names that I hadn't heard of personally before in terms of being linked to Chelsea or getting close to signing for Chelsea. Some of the game's biggest names. You look at it, Robinho, obviously, that's an obvious one. I think a lot of us know. But Andrea Pirlo, David Silva, even as an outside shout, John Ruddy being linked to Chelsea back in 2013. But I sort of want to pick out some of the names that interested me so we can go in a little bit more depth of what they say in the article and I can give my opinion. Firstly, Neymar. Neymar is probably the biggest name in this article, in truth, of a player that was heavily linked to Chelsea. You look at where he's gone to now, of course, gone from Barcelona to PSG, one of the highest rated, highest paid players in the world. You think of how different things could have been if he signed for Chelsea back in 2013, but it was apparently close to happening because Chelsea were heavily pursuing Neymar from Santos in 2013, and Michael Emenalo, the former technical director, had a lot to do with this. As you can see, Chelsea first pursued Neymar vigorously in 2010 and still had high hopes of beating Barcelona to his signature when they dispatched Emenalo to Brazil that summer. Emenalo prepared a passionate speech for the player and his father. In it, he called on NBA star Michael Jordan's massive impact on the Chicago Bulls as an example of what Neymar could bring to Stamford Bridge. Now, what it goes on to say is that the meeting took place and Neymar's father, who has a lot to do with the business of Neymar and transfers, it was very difficult to convince him about Chelsea and convince him about moving. But then what they found out later was there was already an agreement in place about Neymar moving to Barcelona. And that became an investigation about tax later on, which was a problem for Barcelona. And just, I think what came out of this for me is just further sort of backing up of what we've seen with Neymar's career. I don't know if you remember, if you watched his press conference when he signed for PSG, I think it was a couple of years back, 2017, his massive entourage. And I think when I look at Neymar, of course, a world-class player, a world-class talent, a player that would have been so beneficial to Chelsea. There's no doubt about that. You think him and Eden Hazard working together at Chelsea and playing together at the same time. But you just think of all that baggage and all of that, those problems that you've seen throughout Neymar's career, that clubs have, some of the biggest clubs in the world. And I just wonder whether, in truth, having a player like Hazard was a better option. And in my opinion, I prefer Eden Hazard. And I think at times, in the last World Cup, for me, it was undeniable who the better player was, and that was the Belgian over the Brazilian. And I think Eden Hazard as a character, if you're talking about sort of those world-class stars, I think as a character, Eden Hazard was much more beneficial to Chelsea, much more healthy for the dressing room. And I just wonder, Neymar, with all his baggage, with all of that entourage and all of that business that goes on with Neymar, I just wonder whether it had been a good influence at Chelsea. And we talk a lot about player power. Would that have been a negative at Chelsea? There's no denying, of course. I'm not denying that Neymar wouldn't have been an exceptional signing and wouldn't have improved Chelsea in the area he was playing. But just in retrospect, is this going to be a problem that is going to haunt clubs for a long time, trying to get Neymar, and considering how much he's worth and considering how quickly he seems to change his mind on who he wants to play for? Next was two players who moved to Liverpool in 2017 instead of Chelsea, Virgil van Dijk and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. Oxlade-Chamberlain was a little bit more public in the transfer deadline day. Chelsea were trying to sign a wing-back, and Oxlade-Chamberlain looked like he could have been moving to Chelsea. Chelsea do not have fond memories of 2017 as far as new arrivals go. That was the year a combined 138 million was spent on Alvaro Morata, Danny Drinkwater and Bakayoko. To make matters worse, it was also the year that Van Dijk and Oxlade-Chamberlain ignored Chelsea's advances and chose to join Liverpool instead. There was a common theme in these two cases, namely that they much preferred the personality of Jurgen Klopp to his Stamford Bridge counterpart Antonio Conte. And what's really interesting about this case was a variety of factors. Antonio Conte's personality in comparison to Jurgen Klopp's personality, the style of football. Obviously, the players preferred the more attractive style of football and attacking style of football that Jurgen Klopp goes for. But I think fundamentally that I think is key here, and what I think Chelsea should take out going forward, is longevity. Both players apparently were concerned about the longevity of Conte at Chelsea, and they were proven right, because within 9 months' time, Antonio Conte was out of Chelsea. He wasn't at the club anymore. We know what happened in 17-18, the dispute that went on between Conte and the Chelsea board. And it really wasn't a good season for Chelsea. And you can understand why, how both players will feel very justified in those moves. And I think it's something that Chelsea need to think of moving forward, that even when you have all this investment, even when we have the success of a Premier League title, fundamentally, if you've got a manager that's on shaky grounds that could be gone within 9 months, it's doubtful if you're going to get players, because players want to have a vision. They want to have a clear vision now. They want to know what your style of football is, what your vision is, not only for the team, but for them as a player, and how they're going to be involved. And I just think that's something Chelsea need to change, of a long-term project now. We know with Hakim Ziyech, as we've learned from Ziyech's own words, a big component of convincing him to join Chelsea from Ajax was Frank Lampard, was a personal phone call from Frank Lampard, was speaking to him. Clearly the personality of Conte, but also the short-termism of Chelsea that we've seen recently really does deter some players from joining your club. Hopefully that's a lesson Chelsea have learnt now, and they can move forward and not make a mistake again, because those are two players that would be absolutely brilliant for Chelsea, and it's a shame we did miss out on them in 2017. And also, just another player quickly, Mezut Ozil was linked to Chelsea at one point. Chelsea could have signed Mezut Ozil in, I believe it was 2010, as reported in the article, just after that World Cup, but he chose Real Madrid instead. So a little bit like the Neymar case, in the sense that a player had already made their minds up, and it is very difficult if a player has already made their minds up, they want to go and play for Real Madrid, they want to go and play for Barcelona, to convince them otherwise. But Chelsea apparently had a good working relationship with Werder Bremen at the time, and felt they could sign Ozil. That was another player, you think of the history and the sliding doors moment of that, where Mezut Ozil, of course, went to Real Madrid, played under Jose Mourinho, and then moved to Arsenal. We know the rest is history on that one. And lastly, I want to talk about Luke Shaw, the left back. Apparently Chelsea were really interested in signing Luke Shaw in 2014 when he was still at Southampton, had a brilliant season under Pochettino, if you remember that. And as the article points out, Shaw was a Chelsea fan growing up. So it says it is often regarded as an advantage if the player you are trying to sign supports your team, but Shaw is an example of how little sway it can hold. Chelsea wanted Shaw to be the replacement for Ashley Cole, and were prepared to pay the Southampton left back up to 90 grand a week to join them. But much to Mourinho's frustration, Shaw's allegiance to Chelsea was quickly forgotten when United trumped their salary offer by offering an incredible 130 grand a week. So Luke Shaw at the time, it's interesting looking back now in retrospect at that time period, because Shaw was being regarded as one of the most exciting left backs in the country. That exciting Southampton side, when you think about it, and who was involved there under Pochettino at the start of his Premier League career. That he could be the next left back, the left back to replace Ashley Cole, not only for Chelsea, but for England for the next 10 years. Of course, he went to Man United. And really, Shaw hasn't turned out to be that. Yes, he had a really horrible injury in 2015, I believe it was. He was out for almost a year, I think. Really horrible injury, of course, set him back. But I think what you've seen from there is a player that I think at times lacks professionalism. I think that's a problem he's had throughout his career, but really hasn't, gone to the heights that I think once people expected him to. And when you look at it in retrospect, Chelsea went for Felipe Luis instead from Atletico Madrid, who didn't actually play a lot for Chelsea, was only at Chelsea for a year. And Dave mostly played there for his career under Mourinho, played at left back for a lot. And I think Chelsea not signing Luke Shaw, I think has been a benefit. I think Dave has been a better defender than Luke Shaw. I even think he's been a better left back at points than Luke Shaw. And I think I'm fair in saying that, because the season after, Chelsea won the Premier League title, the 14-15 season, with Dave as left back. Shaw's probably the only one on this list that I think Chelsea don't regret not signing. I think that in retrospect, they'll think, actually, we've got better players, Azpilicueta, even Marcos Alonso I rate higher than Luke Shaw currently. So that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what I discussed today, some of the players we missed out on. How do you think they would have done at Chelsea in a different scenario? Are there any players not mentioned on this list that you can remember nearly signing for Chelsea who you think would have been good additions in the past? Please let me know. But thank you guys once again. You can follow me on Twitter at Son of Chelsea, and I'll see you again.